Remember, this is their 1 hour left, so this has got to be their ace in the hole. Like, they've got less than an hour left probably by now.
I am a computer forensics investigator.
Okay.
Where are you employed?
I work for a company called iDiscovery Solutions, or IDS.
And what is your title?
Wouldn't it be iDiscover Solutions?
What services does IDS perform?
IDS provides consulting, expert testimony, forensic analysis, data analysis, electronic data review and production services, all to the business and legal community.
What, if any, of those services performed by IDS have you performed?
I perform all of those services.
How many years of experience do you have in computer forensics investigation?
Oh, no.
I've worked in the industry for 20 years.
Can you please describe that experience to the jury?
Oh, no.
I have experience creating and implementing data preservation and collection strategies, doing data collections in a forensically sound manner, extracting data from collections, as well as analysis and metadata analysis of the evidence that I extract.
You mentioned collecting data from forensic collections. What material are you forensically imaging?
This would be any type of material that stores digital evidence. An iPhone, an iPad, a tablet, laptop, a cloud account, your Gmail account, anything that has digital evidence.
He's right there.
Have you published in your areas of expertise?
Yes, I've published on data preservation and collection and analysis strategies.
Okay.
Have you ever given any trainings or presentations to other individuals in the e-discovery area?
Yes, I have. I do trainings and presentations to lawyers through continuous learning education.
Okay.
What, if any, professional certifications do you have?
I have a GIAC GCFE, that's the GIAC Certified Forensic Examiner certification.
And what were the requirements of obtaining that certification?
To obtain that certification, you need a minimum number of hours in the field, as well as you need to pass a test with a certain degree of, a certain percentage of passing.
Do you belong to any professional organizations?
So it's defensive
I
driving.
do. I'm a member of a conference called the Sedona Conference. It's a conference that is a group of legal professionals, judges, and technologists, and we discuss the intersection of law and technology issues in the legal community.
Have you previously served as an expert witness?
Yes, I have.
And when did you first serve as an expert witness?
I believe that would have been around 2009 was the first time I served.
Have you previously been qualified as an expert witness in the field of computer forensics?
Yes, I have. I've been qualified probably a half dozen to a dozen times in both federal and state court, including this court right here.
And has a court ever declined to qualify you as an expert witness?
No, they have not.
Your Honor, I offer Julian Acker as an expert in the field of computer forensics.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, so moved. Could you just spell your last name for
Okay.
me, Mr. Acker?
Ackert, A-C-K-E-R-T.
Thank you so much, sir.
Mr. Acker, what is forensic imaging?
Forensic imaging is the process of capturing the data on a digital device in a forensically sound manner.
Okay.
And how is a forensic copy created?
Using specialized software that's available to forensic investigators, we're able to collect the data from devices, and that software may vary depending on the device, like a phone or a laptop.
Sure, yeah, it makes
What
sense.
type of information does a forensic image collect?
It's meant to really collect everything on the device. So, for example, on a laptop, it's going to collect your documents, your emails, your photographs, your documents like Excel spreadsheets, PDF files, any applications that you ran, the history of what you've opened or looked at on the laptop, as well as all of the metadata for these different types of electronically stored information files.
Okay, sure,
And
yeah.
does
it makes
any
sense.
other information accompany that information that's collected?
Typically with a forensic image, you're also going to get log files. Log files are files that help you validate the forensic image and verify that it was a forensically sound data collection.
Okay.
And how do log files enable you to do that?
Log files list information within the files. Sometimes they're even embedded within the images themselves, but they provide verification information that allows you to authenticate the image and the data on the image.
Okay.
What is the purpose of creating a forensic image of devices or data?
In order to extract and analyze data forensically for the courts, you need to create a forensic image of the data first and gather the data from the forensic image.
And what, if any, specific types of data are collected in that image and extraction?
It's going to be any type of data that comes from the image, whether you're extracting photographs or documents or spreadsheets or anything of that nature.
Okay.
Do you recall Mr. Neumeister mentioning the term hashing yesterday?
I do.
What is that?
Hashing is essentially a digital fingerprint of a file. It's an evaluation of the binary ones and zeros, or how the file is stored on a hard drive, and it examines the ones and zeros in a manner that gives every file a digital fingerprint, essentially, and identifies the uniqueness of the file.
Right.
And what, if any, applicability does hashing have to the visual appearance of data?
Hashing has nothing to do with the visual appearance. For example, if I had a Word document that I printed and then saved, therefore I haven't visually changed the Word document, the metadata of that Word document indicating that I printed it would be different, and therefore that Word document would not hash to the version that I used before printing.
That's an
Can you
incomplete
give any
answer.
examples of digital photographs that visually appear the same, not hashing?
I believe Mr. Neumeister included 3 of those in his demonstratives yesterday, 3 side-by-side photographs
her
that
arm.
Looked visually the same but did not hash. It made sense that they wouldn't hash. Each of them had different file sizes. And a file size can change for a photograph depending on what you do with the photograph. So for example, maybe you want to take that photograph and email it to somebody, and on your phone, you choose to use a small, medium, or large, or different size of the photograph when you email. When you send that email with that photograph, you've changed the hash value because you've changed the ones and zeros because you've changed the size of the photograph.
Most emails don't compress files that way.
What, if anything, do you recall from Mr. Neumeister's testimony
Do they?
regarding photos 3?
Mine doesn't.
Mr. Neumeister was concerned about a particular metadata field, EXIF metadata, which there's 2 types of metadata for files. There's the embedded metadata, which is what we're discussing here, the EXIF metadata, and external metadata. And Mr. Neumeister was concerned with embedded metadata within the file that indicated that the software version that the file last ran through was Photos.
What is Photos 3.0?
Photos is actually the software application that's built into the Apple Macintosh operating system for laptops. This is the application that launches by default when you're on an Apple computer and use Photos.
Okay.
What are the capabilities of Photos 3.0?
There's multiple capabilities for it. You can, for example, create an album with it and put multiple photos within an album. You can organize or sort your photos by date and time taken or place. You can also use that to edit photos.
You mentioned metadata earlier. What is that?
Metadata is information about a file. For example, with a document, it could be when was the document created or last saved, or who saved it, who was the author of the document. For photographs, metadata includes information that you've seen on demonstratives before, including when was the image taken, what kind of phone took the image, what software was originally used for that image. Any type of information inside the photograph, the EXIF data that you've heard, is metadata.
Did you form any opinions in response to Mr. Neumeister's testimony regarding Photos 3.0 appearing in a software EXIF metadata field?
Okay, let's
Yes,
see
I
it.
did.
And what are those?
My opinion is that for each of the photos that he identified, for all but one in his demonstrative, I actually found the equivalent original photo that did not have photos in the EXIF metadata. In other words, those are the photos that he was indicated he would have expected to see the iOS or the phone software version on those photos.
How do you know it is an original version of the photograph?
This is a little bit dependent on the Apple ecosystem. Amber uses Apple devices, and those devices, by definition,
Why
how
use
Apple
Android?
works, synchronize your information from device to device. So, for example, if you take a photo on your phone, you see that same photo on your tablet or your iPad or your iCloud account or even your MacBook. And that's all because of user experience. Apple wants you to be able to see and visually have the same experience on all your devices. So the photo that was originally taken traverses or gets synchronized to other devices by design of Apple, and that synchronization process does not affect the metadata that we're talking about here, which is the embedded metadata.
When you say that a version of iOS software was listed in the software EXIF metadata field, what does that mean?
That means that the photo was not saved using the Photos application.
And what, if any, data sets did you use to come to that conclusion?
I used all of the data sets that I collected or were collected for Amber, including mobile devices, tablets, laptops, etc.
Michelle, can you please pull up Defendant's Exhibit 1671? Do you recognize this chart, Mr. Eckert?
I do.
Okay.
What is it? Without yet saying what the contents, just generally, what is it?
This is a chart I created as part of my report.
Okay, it's
Your
not
Honor,
being
permission
shown.
to publish Defendant 671 is a demonstrative.
All right, let's see
Any
it.
objection?
I want
No
to see
objection,
this.
Your Honor.
All right.
Yeah, doesn't mean
Published
anything.
As a demonstrative?
Mr. Acker, can you please describe in more
It's
detail
complicated.
what the information in this chart? Michelle, if you could just stay at the top for a quick second.
Okay.
A little further up.
There we go. All right. So there's a bunch of numbers.
Great.
Thank you. This chart represents for each of the items in Neumeister's report, which his demonstrative was based on, the page number of the item on his report and the items that I found on Ms. Heard's devices that did not indicate the software metadata field showing photos. Rather, they indicated that they were the original software metadata field of iOS.
Okay.
And do you see the second column titled Neumeister Report Date Captured?
Yes, I do.
What the information in that column mean?
This is the date time metadata of the particular photo on Neumeister's report. So for example, the first row, 23, the date time captured, or the date captured is December 16th, 2015. The second row, 24, you see that the date time is May 21st, 2016. Third row, May 21st, 2016. Fourth row, May 21st, 2016.
The
Can you
guy.
scroll to the next page, please, Michelle? Please continue for the items on this page.
The top row of this page, the one that came from Neumeister's report, page 30, shows December 16th, 2016. And then finally, 32 shows March 23rd, 2013.
Do you see, can you scroll back to the top, please, Michelle? Do you see the,
Okay.
all the way to the top, I'm sorry, the right-hand column of this chart,
Yes, I do.
and where it says device ID and file name?
Yes.
Can you please explain what the information in that column means for each of the items identified from Mr. Neumeister's demonstrative?
Okay, let's see it.
So these are the evidence IDs, and evidence ID is the ID value I give to a particular piece of data that I collect, for example, a phone or a laptop, and the matching file name found on that evidence ID that indicated the original version of this same photograph that Neumeister identified that did not show photos in the software metadata and rather showed the iOS version in the metadata.
And what do the little A's followed by numbers back up, what does that mean?
Those are evidence IDs. Anything with an A number is the evidence ID of an actual device collected. Anything that starts with a backup and follows by another number is an iTunes backup.
Okay.
So what, if any, what items in this right-hand column, based on the coding you have here, are iTunes backups?
Only the ones that start with the word backup. Even the ones that start with an A number are actually an iTunes or an iOS backup in iCloud. So your phone can actually be backed up to iCloud, and
Yeah.
those are coming from an iOS backup in iCloud. Everything else is coming from an actual physical device.
Can you just take this down for a second, Michelle, and pull up 1675, please? Defendant 1675.
The original guy said that he was only given screen grabs, though. And he explicitly stated
And
that.
do you recognize this chart, Mr. Eckert?
Yes, I do.
Remember he
Without
said
yet getting
that.
into the contents, can you please describe generally what it is?
This is a chart that I prepared as a summary of my findings.
Permission to publish Defendant
Okay.
1675 is a demonstrative, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, 1675 will be published as demonstrative.
Can you please describe in more detail what the three columns you can see in this chart represent?
Sure, this starts to give some detail about the particular evidence ID. So for example, A001 was an iPhone X of Amber's that was collected. A002 was an iPad of Amber's collected. A11, 12, and 13, slightly down, are 3 different laptops that were collected for Amber.
And do you see the IDS evidence number column?
Yes, I do.
Do you see the source type column?
Yes, I do.
in the source details column.
Yes, I do.
Can you please describe what those columns mean?
Generally, the ID evidence number is the evidence number that we assign to a particular piece of evidence, and the type and details come from a description of that type of evidence based upon the collection set.
And Michelle, can you please do a side-by-side of 1675 and 1671?
Oh, this is going to help the jury. Yeah, now they'll understand it.
Thank you. So, Mr. Actor, can you please describe the relationship between these two demonstrative exhibits?
Certainly. If you look at 1671,
Now it
the
makes
one
sense.
on the left, you can see in the fourth column the different evidence IDs where I identified the original versions of those same pictures that Mr. Neumeister had specifically identified and the sources of where they were identified. So if you look at the first one, for example, the picture Neumeister referenced on page 24, or I guess that's the second one, there are equivalent versions or original versions of those that do not show the software EXIF metadata field of photos. Rather, it shows the original iOS version on A001, which was Amber Heard's iPhone X, A002, which is Amber Heard's iPad Pro. Scrolling on down through there, you see it on A0011, which is Amber Heard's laptop, same with A0012 and 13. You can see this again with the next row that's visible at the very top. Neumeister identified a photograph on page 30 taken on December 16th, 2015. And he was concerned about the EXIF metadata of that, showing the software version of photos. The original versions of those were found again on A001, that's her iPhone X, A002, her iPad. And it's not surprising to me that I found all these on all the devices because that's how the Apple ecosystem works. It replicates your pictures or synchronizes your pictures across your devices when you take them.
So what about the different
Mr.
pictures?
Actor, you can take this down.
The same picture with
Mr.
different
Neumeister's
colors.
Testimony regarding what he claims of EXIF metadata modification.
Yes, I do. This is a completely hypothetical scenario. Mr. Neumeister never specified any pictures with specificity that had EXIF metadata modification. And
That's true.
It's a hypothetical in my opinion.
That's absolutely
Mr. Actor,
true.
did you form any overall conclusions in this case?
Yes, I did.
And what were those?
The images that were created in this case included log files that allowed me to validate and verify the evidence collected. I validated and verified the log files of the evidence for which I found Mr. Neumeister's original photos that he had concerns about, specifically the ones that had iOS in the software metadata field. I validated that those came from devices that had log files that were validated by me. In other words, they came from original evidence files, and in most instances, they came from more than one file.
Mr. Acker, the opinions you have testified to today made to a reasonable degree of forensic certainty.
God.
Yes, they are.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay.
Cross-examination, sir?
Okay.
Good morning, sir.
Uh-oh. Here it comes.
You've worked with opposing counsel's law firm approximately 20 times before?
Give or take, yes.
Oh, wow.
For more than a dozen years?
Those 20 probably would have been spread out over more than a dozen years.
Okay.
As you sit here today, you cannot testify that all of the photographs produced by Ms. Heard are authentic originals, correct?
Now, I can testify to the ones that Mr. Neumeister identified with specificity.
Right, but there were thousands of photographs provided that Mr. Neumeister didn't testify about, right?
I have no opinions on any photographs that the opposing expert has no opinions on.
All right. My question to you, though, is as you sit here today, can you testify that all the photographs produced by Ms. Heard are authentic originals?
As I sit here today, I cannot opine to photographs that have not been presented to me that are not authentic originals.
All right. You'll agree with me that in some instances, Ms. Heard produced multiple versions of the same photograph, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you just talked about it, right?
Yes.
Oh,
And you'll agree with me that the XF data of some of the photos produced by Ms. Heard reflect the use of a photo editing application.
No.
No?
I'll agree that they show the use of the Photos application, which is a sorting and editing application.
Okay, so what you were quibbling with is that it will both sort and edit.
That is correct.
Okay. Are you prepared to swear under oath that each and every photograph provided by Ms. Heard and entered into evidence in this court is an authentic original?
oh no.
Based on the metadata that I have reviewed of the specific
Oh,
photographs
no.
I have reviewed, I can
Are you
confirm that those are authentic original photographs. For the ones that Mr. Neumeister identified, I identified photos that were authentic originals.
No, I'm
He's
asking
gonna
a
show
broader
this side
question
by
than that.
side.
There were multiple photographs that Ms. Heard provided that were entered into evidence in this court. Are you testifying that those are each authentic originals?
I have no testimony or opinion on those because nobody's provided me opinion that they're not.
Okay.
Well, yeah, he did. The
Mr.
guy did
Gibson, will
yesterday.
you pull up Defendant's Exhibit 712 and Defendant's 713 next to one another? Your Honor, these have already been admitted, and I ask
Here we go.
to the jury.
Okay, if they're admitted, we can publish.
Here we go. Is it going to be the two that I think it is?
Can you see those?
Ah! There it is.
Yes, I can.
You'll agree with me that those are different pictures?
Visually, they look different to me, yes.
All right. We can
Yeah.
take that down.
Oh no. Both originals. Oh man. Yeah, they're different. Both originals, huh? Yeah, exactly. Here we go.
Mr. Gibson, can you pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 1308?
Okay, here we go. Let's see it again.
This has not been admitted, Your Honor, and I propose to use it as a demonstrative.
Any objection?
Not as a
The video is coming.
All right. Be identified and published to the jury as a demonstrative.
Oh god. Oh god. Is it really the video?
Any objection to entering it into evidence?
Oh
I would
god.
object it's cumulative, Your Honor.
No.
Actually, no. No objection, Your Honor.
No objection. All right, it's in evidence then.
All right. 1308 is in evidence. Mr. Gibson, can you blow up the time, date, and file name?
Uh-huh. It's the exact same
Sir,
for both of
you
them.
just agreed with me that
What?
those two photos
See?
are different photos, correct?
See?
I agreed that they were visually different, yes.
Right. So they are two visually different photos that were created at the exact same hour, the exact same minute, the exact same second
Oh my
as
god.
each other, correct?
Yep.
And that's what the daytime metadata shows, yes.
And the metadata shows something else too. They have the exact same file name, don't they, sir?
Yes, but that's not embedded metadata.
Right.
That's not the only thing that
How
matters.
do you have this jury decide which one is real?
I think you would need to look at the software metadata field, which
Oh,
I
no.
haven't looked at. I don't recall if I looked at for this particular
Which
field,
one is real?
but I
The
think that's what
implication.
Even Mr. Neumeister said that you need to look at the software metadata field.
But we have two photographs entered into evidence in this court that have the same identifying information, but in your view, look visually different, correct?
I don't agree that they have the same identifying information. I don't see a software metadata field here.
The identifying information includes
the
the
title.
hour, minute, and second they were taken.
That's right.
This picture were taken.
I see that.
No further questions.
All right. And just for the record, since we already have 712 and 713 in evidence, as redacted. Now this will be 712 and 713A. So 712A and 71213A are now in evidence, just to keep the record clean, okay?
Okay, here we go.
All right.
Your Honor.
Redirect.
Yep.
Mr. Acker, you just mentioned embedded.
The anti-wizard,
What is
man.
that?
Embedded metadata is metadata inside a file. I talked earlier about the date printed of a Word document. That's embedded into the file, and that traverses with the file wherever it goes.
And based on all of the photo metadata you have reviewed, do you have any reason to question the forensic authenticity of any photos Mr. Neumeister testified to for which you were responding to?
Can you repeat that question, please?
Yeah. Based on all of the photo metadata you have reviewed, based on the photos Mr. Neumeister testified to, do you have any reason to question the forensic authenticity of those photos?
I do not.
Following your cross-examination, Mr. Acker, have any of your opinions in this matter changed?
Are you
They
kidding?
have not.
And is it still your testimony that the opinions you testified to do today are made with a reasonable degree of forensic certainty?
No.
No further questions, Your
All
Honor.
right, thank you. Sir, you can have a seat in the courtroom, or you're free to go.
How is this allowed?
Could you
I don't
approach
know.
just for a moment?
That's unreal. Here's the thing, is like they asked him, they go and they ask the guy, they say, oh man, what, I don't even know, like, yeah, it's such a rigid question. Like, it was so obvious that the guy, because you knew what the anti-wizard was going to do. You knew what it was going to be. He was going to show those two photos and try to get him to say that they were authentic. But you saw what he said. Which one is authentic? How would you tell which one it is? The implication with that is that one of them is not authentic. And it's so obvious. Like, who do you think you're fooling with this thing? I mean, it's just crazy. And also, like, of course he can't prove that every single photo was, was fabricated. But this is what I would say. This is what my opinion would be, is that whenever you see one photo that has been altered, I would assume that this is a pattern of behavior, especially with other lies that have been found out before then. This is a pattern of behavior that's happened, and it's crazy. But the metadata, yeah, the metadata is not the whole story. The problem was Amber submitting it. Yeah, exactly. It's just crazy. I need to take a piss, guys. I'll be right back. Sorry.
Your next witness,
We call Dr. Richard Gilbert, Your Honor.
Dr. Gilbert.
Mr. Gilbert. All right, let's see him.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this case under penalty of law?
Okay, here we go. It's a doctor, actually. Yeah, I know.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
I'm sure they'll have some irrelevant credibility that they'll try to discredit him on, though.
Good morning, Dr. Gilbert.
Good morning.
Would you please state your name for the record?
Richard Stephen Gilbert.
And what is your occupation?
Dick Gilbert.
I am an orthopedic surgeon and I have a subspecialty training in surgery of the hand and upper extremity.
I think it's probably going to have to do with Johnny's
Dr.
hand.
Gilbert, where do you work currently?
I currently work in New York and Long Island at Northwell Health.
Okay.
And you mentioned you have a specialty. Can you tell us a little bit more about what your specialty is?
So after medical school, I trained in orthopedic surgery and I did an orthopedic surgery residency. And for a year thereafter, I did a hand and upper extremity surgery resident fellowship. And so my practice for the past 22 years has been limited to surgery of the hand, wrist, and elbow.
Okay.
And I think you may have gotten ahead of me there, but how long have you been practicing?
22 years.
Okay. What percentage
Long
of your
time.
practice over the past 22 years has involved surgery?
Approximately 1/3 of my practice.
Okay.
It's a lot of work.
And other than that 1/3 that involves surgery, what does the rest of your practice entail?
The rest of my practice entails some academic work,
Thanks,
but
Ray.
mostly seeing patients in the office, seeing them either pre or post-operatively. A large portion of hand surgeons treat patients non-operatively.
In terms of the surgeries that you do, can you describe for us the types of surgeries that you will perform?
So again, I limit my practice to hand, wrist, and elbow. I would say approximately 75% or so of my practice is limited to the hand itself.
Okay.
And this really varies from anything from conditions like carpal tunnel syndrome to tendinitis to injuries such as amputations, fractures, sharp lacerations, etc.
Okay. Makes sense.
Over the course of your 22 years of practice, how many surgeries would you estimate you've performed?
I perform about 300 to 400 surgeries a year, so a rough estimate would be approximately 10,000, maybe a little less.
Where are you currently licensed?
In New York.
And how long have you been licensed
Holy shit.
in New York?
I have been licensed in New York since 1994.
I've done 10,000
So that would be
dailies.
28 years.
And do you have any certifications?
Yes.
And can you tell us about those?
I am board certified by the American Board of Orthopedic Surgery, and I have a certificate of added qualifications in surgery of the hand from the American Society for Surgery of the Hand.
When did you receive your board certification?
2002.
And can you describe for us what current positions you hold?
I am currently an assistant professor of orthopedic surgery at Northwell Health, and I'm also the president-elect of the New York Society for Surgery of the Hand.
So he got elected.
In what
That's
professional
interesting.
organizations are you a member?
I'm a member of multiple orthopedic organizations, including the American Board of Orthopedic Surgery, the
Okay.
American Association of Orthopedic Surgery, and the American Society for Surgery of the Hand, as well as the New York Society for Surgery of the Hand.
Yes, sir, Mr. President.
Have you published any articles in your field?
Yes, I have.
Oh my God.
Have you testified as an expert before?
Yes, I have.
Can you ballpark for us how many times?
Certainly less than 10 over the past 22 years.
Yeah, he was doing surgery, you know?
Your Honor, at this time, we'd like to offer Dr. Gilbert as an expert in the field of orthopedic surgery, specializing in the hand.
All right, any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
So moved.
All right, there it is. What a surprise.
So, Dr. Gilbert, what work were you asked to do in connection with this case?
So I was asked to review medical records, radiographs, pictures, as well as testimonies and depositions related to Mr. Depp's finger injury.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And
That's what I thought he was there for.
to your understanding, what is Mr. Depp's explanation of how his finger was injured?
He describes that he was in Australia and his right hand was over the side of a bar when a vodka bottle was thrown at his hand, injuring his right middle finger.
That's a lot.
And he describes that the vodka bottle exploded.
Are you aware of other explanations for that injury?
There have been multiple other explanations, but I think the one that was brought out was by Ms. Hurd, who
Alternative
believed that
explanations.
Mr. Depp was holding a landline and out of anger was punching it against the wall, and this resulted in his right middle finger injury.
Cut his own finger
Based
off.
on
That's
your
crazy.
review of the medical records and other documents in connection with Mr. Depp's finger injury, how would you describe the nature of the injury to Mr. Depp's finger?
Well, the nature of the injury was he had what we describe as a combinated fracture of the distal phalanx, meaning there was a fracture of the tip of the finger, and comminuted meaning that there were multiple pieces.
Okay.
So this is some type of blunt force with a high mechanism of injury. He also sustained loss of the tissue along what's called the ulnar side of the finger towards the little finger.
That's the nasty part we saw.
And this appeared, based upon my review of the pictures, to be some type of sharp laceration because it represented a clean edges of the wound.
Uh-huh. Maybe something clean created by a knife.
Take a look at
Or, sorry,
Plaintiff's
not
Exhibit
knife.
60
Glass, excuse me. All right, here we go.
and pull up to go to page 3.
I got it ready, boys.
And Dr. Gilbert, are you familiar with this document?
Yes.
I got to get it ready in
And what
case
is it?
there's some nasty
these are
shit that shows up
two
on here.
Radiographs, x-rays of Mr. Depp's finger, his middle finger.
Okay. Sorry, just to stop you, but Your Honor, may we publish this to the jury as a demonstrative?
Any objection? All right, we'll identify it as 60, page 3, and publish to the jury.
Okay, let's
And
see.
Dr. Gilbert, sorry to cut you off there. Can you just tell a jury what we're looking at here?
It's fine. I'm just afraid.
Two
That's all.
X-rays of Mr. Depp's right middle finger after the injury.
We saw that.
And towards the tip of the finger, there's a fracture. Again, what I described as a comminuted fracture, meaning there are multiple pieces at the tip. There's also a transverse component to the fracture closer to the joint.
In your view, what types of mechanisms can cause this sort of injury?
So this is a mechanism of injury that has high velocity or force, generally a crush-type injury. A simple fall would not result in a comminuted fracture such as is seen in these X-rays.
And we're using the term comminuted fracture. Can we just define that quickly for us?
So again, comminuted, and it's not particular to a finger, is a medical term for a fracture that has multiple fragments.
Okay.
In your opinion, could this
Makes
injury
sense, it's fine.
have been sustained in the manner Mr. Depp described?
I do believe so.
And how might that work? How might a thrown vodka bottle produce an injury like this?
Let's
So a
find out.
vodka bottle, which is a hard object, would have crushed the tip of the finger, resulting in the comminuted fracture. And in addition, as the vodka bottle broke, the glass would have lacerated
Check
the
the
finger,
NBC
resulting
channel?
in the
Okay.
soft tissue loss
Sure.
that was also seen with this injury.
What's your assessment of the description of the
I'll
cause
pull
of
it
the
up so you
injury
guys can see it.
offered by Ms. Heard?
I think that's highly unlikely.
What?
And why is that?
Because in general, when an injury is caused by punching against
I don't see it anywhere.
wall or a hard object,
I don't see
it
it.
is extremely rare to see an injury to the tips of the fingers, which is seen with Mr. Depp's injury. Generally, you're holding something with a fist, and that in general leads to injuries most commonly of the knuckles here, or fractures of the metacarpals. We call these boxer fractures. Second most common after those would be injuries to these, but as you can see, if you're holding
I'll
something
check
and
this one.
hitting against something, it is very unlikely
Yeah, I'll
that
check on this one.
the tips of the fingers will be injured. In addition, just taking into account the radiographs and the pictures of the injury, I would not believe that solely a blunt force against a wall would result in the soft tissue loss.
So
what other
he's
injuries,
saying the
if
exact
any, would you
opposite.
expect to see
basically.
on Mr. Depp's hand if the injury had occurred as Ms. Heard described?
So if you
They won't show
would
it either.
have,
Maybe not.
If that were the cause of the injury, you would certainly, that would be a dorsally directed, so this is the dorsal in the back of the hand, as opposed to the palmar
she
side.
lied?
So if you're punching against something, you would certainly expect an injury to the nail bed, and those are always seen in those type of injuries. If there is an injury to the tip of the finger, which again I said is rare. So you would see either a loss of the nail or blood underneath the nail called a subungual hematoma.
Of course.
In your review of the medical records, did you see any sign of anything like that?
None whatsoever.
In your view, is the injury? Can you explain to us exactly why you think the injury is consistent with Mr. Depp's description?
Well, again, his hand, he describes his hand being held over a marble bar, which is a firm, something firm, unyielding, and the bottle hit against the finger. So
Right.
basically the finger was crushed, resulting in, again, what I described as a comminuted fracture. And as Mr. Depp described, the bottle exploded, so it's certainly reasonable that the glass that exploded as well
had to write
led to
something
the
down.
soft tissue loss along the ulnar aspect of his finger.
Now, did you observe the testimony of Dr. Richard Moore?
Yes, I did.
That was the
And he
previous hand
testified
doctor.
about Mr. Depp's finger injury as well.
Correct.
Said the shit was fake.
Did you agree with Dr. Moore's testimony?
Certain parts of his testimony I did, yes,
Okay.
but not all of it.
Focusing on the parts that you, well, first of all, why don't you tell us what you agree on?
Well, I agreed in terms of his interpretation of the x-rays, saying that he had a combinated fracture and this was some type of high force injury.
So he looked at the picture, he said the finger was fucked up.
What did you disagree with?
All right.
Well, I disagreed with several things
thought
that
the
he
same
said.
thing.
He first said that he does not believe that the mechanism of injury could be, as described by Mr. Depp, holding the hand on the side of a marble bar.
Right.
Because he said it was all a palmar injury, and there was a palmar component to the injury. I'm talking about the soft tissue loss, but there was also a dorsal, meaning the back of the finger. So the soft tissue loss was actually, if you looked at the pictures which were shown when Dr. Moore testified, the injury goes like this. So it's an angled or an oblique type injury.
Okay.
And there's no way that anybody could determine whether or not it was a palmar directive force, meaning from the palm side, or a dorsally directive force. But certainly either are plausible.
Okay. Anything else come to mind that you disagreed with?
Yeah.
Well,
Probably.
he also described that this was definite. Well, he thought that this was a pinching, or what he described as an avulsion type injury, and that's referring to the soft tissue loss. That's certainly possible, but if you look at the pictures that were shown when he testified, the laceration looked fairly clean. There were clean edges. It was not jagged. And generally, when you have an avulsion or a pinch type injury, you see a very irregular border to the skin. It's pinched off, you can imagine, as opposed to something that's cleaner that would be lacerated by, let's just say, a piece of glass or a knife or whatever. And that's more consistent with the pictures of Mr. Depp's injury.
I think that makes a lot of sense what he's saying.
And we're using the term soft tissue loss, and just to make sure we're on the same page, can you just tell us very quickly what you're referring to there?
Yeah, but the
Right,
finger's
so
gone.
there were two components to this injury. One, the fracture of the bone, and two, he had loss of the soft tissues so that the bone was exposed. So that amputated part that was found at the bar.
There's an echo? No, there's not. There's no echo.
Now, you were saying that Dr. Moore testified that this was an avulsion, and meaning a pinching injury, right?
Guys,
Correct.
I know there's an echo.
Why
it's
do you
just
believe
the
it's more
audio.
likely that it was a laceration?
Well, again, in general, a pinch type injury results in one, much more damage to the remaining tissue, but the remaining tissue is usually very irregular. The borders are jagged, and that's not what was depicted in the pictures.
Okay.
Dr. Moore also testified
power
that
of his voice
he
as a
thought
wizard.
the vodka bottle might not have sufficient force to cause the injury here. Is that your understanding of his testimony?
Correct.
That's so weird.
What's your response to that?
It's huge.
I certainly
Thrown.
believe that a vodka bottle that was thrown from a distance against a hand that was resting on a marble bar is more than sufficient force to result in this fracture and soft tissue loss.
Remind me of Microsoft Paint. I'm gonna talk about this.
Now, in looking at the medical records and the pictures of Mr. Depp's hand, what was the condition of his nail?
There was no injury to the nail.
And other than what you've already told us,
Okay.
how does that factor into your analysis, if at all? The fact that there was no injury to the nail?
Well, it makes it highly unlikely that the mechanism of injury described by Ms. Heard resulted in this injury, because you really would always see an injury to the nail and or nail bed.
Yeah, I would agree too. Absolutely. If he's smashing his finger.
Do you have any opinion regarding the direction of the injury?
Well, it's certainly
Super 5
based
seconds.
upon the soft tissue loss. It's an angled injury, or what we call medically an oblique injury, because the soft tissue loss is at an angle. He lost some of the tissue on the back of the finger as well as the palm side, primarily along the palm side. But other than that, you can't make any assumptions. Unless you saw a videotape of this injury, nobody could tell you definitively what the direction of the injury was.
I think that's a good
Dr.
point.
Moore also
You can't be
commented on
certain.
the absence of fragments of broken glass in Mr. Depp's injury. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Good question.
And how does the absence of glass fragments factor into your analysis?
It really doesn't. I've seen hundreds, if not probably at least 500 or more glass injuries, and I would say probably the majority you don't see glass in these injuries. It is much more common to see glass embedded in the wounds when you're talking about very fine glass. So if say a wine glass would explode or something of that nature, where you get little tiny shards. But in general, when you have thick glass, such as you see in a bottle or a pane of glass, you generally don't see, because they break into bigger pieces, and you generally don't see.
I broke
glass,
a car
but,
window before.
You certainly can, but
I'll talk
it's
about
not
this later.
surprising that you don't.
And he's right. He's
Can
actually
you
right.
definitively state how this injury occurred?
No, nobody can definitively state.
I have no
Nobody
further
can be
questions.
certain.
All right, cross-examination.
Yeah, nobody can be certain. There's no way they can be 100% sure, but I think what he's saying is that the other
Thank you, Your
person
Honor.
can't rule out
Good morning, Dr.
what Johnny
Good
Depp
morning.
said.
Now, you're being paid $1,000 an hour for your work on this case, correct?
Correct.
And you agree, just to sum up how Mr. Moniz finished, you agree that the finger injury could have been caused by any number of things, right?
Yes.
And you're not offering an expert opinion on what you believe caused the finger injury, correct?
Correct.
And you're aware, you said a few times Miss Heard's account or Miss Heard's explanation, right? You remember saying that?
Yes.
You're actually aware that Amber has said she doesn't know how he lost his finger. You're aware of that, right?
Yes.
Where'd it go?
So when you were just talking about Miss Heard's account or Miss Heard's explanation, you're aware she's never actually given an explanation for
it
how
was
she
just
lost his
here.
finger. Correct?
No.
Yeah. You're aware that Miss Heard testified, and this was from your deposition, you're aware that she testified she doesn't know how he got his fingertip chopped off. You're aware of that, right?
Asked and answered, Your Honor.
Overruled.
No, I'm not. I reviewed the records, and in one of the testimonies that depositions
He's not going
that
to
I
correct his own
reviewed,
lawyer.
It was described that that potentially it was lost when he was punching against the wall with a phone.
That was the counter story
And on
that was presented.
The last point there, I think we agree. Miss Heard's testified in this trial and previously that she saw him smash a phone to smithereens, a wall phone.
And the
You agree
implication.
with that, correct?
Correct.
But she doesn't know if that was what caused him to lose his finger. You agree with that, correct?
I agree. I cannot speak for her, but yes.
Okay. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
It's like, what do you think you're doing?
Thank you.
I think she did. Like, what is the implication? Like, her story, who else thought her story was that he cut his finger from the phone? Who else thought that? Yeah, who else thought that? I did.
Dr. Gilbert, you gave a deposition in this case on March 17th, correct?
Correct.
You were under oath in that deposition. You swore to tell the truth, correct?
Correct.
Okay, if you could turn to page 61, please.
Okay.
See, there are four pages per
Here we go.
page of paper. It's on page 16 of the document.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Okay, in line 9, you're asked a question, and then Amber's response to that question, that's the line 9. Can you read that, please? Answer, I do not know. I did not see his finger go off. Question, and Dr. Gilbert, are you aware that Amber did not see Mr. Depp's finger go off? Answer, I mean, I'm aware that, well, I am from reading this. I'm aware of the mechanism that she claimed would cause the finger injury. Question, but have you read anything so far that indicates she doesn't know how the finger injury happened? Answer, so far from what I'm reading here, yes. Did I read that right?
Yes.
And you've heard no testimony in this trial from Miss Heard that the finger injury was definitively caused by the phone.
Definitively.
That she doesn't know, correct?
Qualifying
Correct.
statement.
And you'd agree that the fingernail was uninjured. You said that,
Intellectually
Correct.
dishonest.
right? And the nail bed was uninjured,
Correct.
correct? But the area under the fingernail, in the pulp of the finger, that's where the injury took place, right?
It was not isolated to the pulp, no.
But it didn't injure the fingernail. That's my
Correct,
question. Okay.
yes.
And under Mr. Depp's alleged theory, Amber threw a vodka bottle at him from 10 feet away or so, right?
Correct.
And you testified you have no way to determine the angle that the bottle was coming from.
Correct.
How could he?
But she threw it on a downward trajectory, correct? She didn't, there's no allegation, you've never read anything that she somehow underhanded it so it came up to his finger, right?
Correct.
And there's no way to tell, as you testified, what exact direction it came from, right?
Correct.
And the glass exploded, but you've already testified there was no glass in the wound, right?
Correct.
You haven't read any record of that in any medical records, correct?
I can explain
Correct.
why he's
You
wrong
also
with
haven't
that.
read anything about there being cuts on the rest of his hand, right?
Correct.
And there was no glass found anywhere on the rest of his hand.
Yeah, I
correct?
can explain
Correct.
that.
No bruising or injury on any other part of his hand other than the tip of his middle finger.
Correct.
And somehow, under Mr. Depp's theory, that bottle hit the bar and his fingers, but didn't damage the fingernail while it amputated the area under the nail. Correct?
Correct.
And
He's
your
completely
explanation
confident.
of that
He's like, yes,
is that
that's
you
right.
believe that his hand must have moved at some point during the force of the injury. Isn't that correct?
No, I said it could have, but I did not say that it did.
He said he
No,
wasn't
you
definitive.
you believe that it did, don't you?
I said that it likely did, but I
Yeah.
was not there, and I don't have videotape of the injury, so
Who wouldn't have
I
moved?
can't determine that definitively.
Of course.
Okay. Well, let's turn to page 25 of your deposition, please.
Oh my God.
Page
Let's read
7.
something else out of context. Thank you. Let's do that. Yeah, how could he possibly know?
Sorry,
Page 25 and 26. So it's page 7 of the document.
Okay.
Do you have a time
Sorry if I was
machine,
unclear
sir?
on that.
No problem.
Did you see it with your time machine? No? Okay. Guys, come on.
I'm there.
Okay.
Who is this guy?
Line 18, question, and to be clear, by, quote, sitting in that position, you mean hand down, palmar side down. Answer, that's what he claimed. I mean, according to the history, yes. Question, and would it matter if Mr. Depp's hand was palmar side down? Answer, not really, because it really, and I discussed this, it really just depends upon the angle at which the injury occurred, and as well, you can't determine if his hand had moved at some point during the force of the injury, which I believe it probably did, which I didn't get into in my note here, but question, and why do you believe that? Have you read anything in any of the materials to suggest that? Answer, no. Just that if it completely hit on the back of the finger, then he would have had a nail bed injury, which he did not. Did I read that right?
Correct.
That was testimony you gave under oath a month or two ago, right?
Correct.
So even though you have never read anything that suggests Mr. Depp's hand moved, his hand moving is the only way that you can fit your testimony into what Mr. Depp wants you to testify to.
Wants
about how
you
the
to
injury occurred,
testify
isn't it?
to.
No, that's incorrect.
Oh,
Okay, that's what you testified to, that if his hand hadn't moved, that there would be a nail bed injury, correct?
choose wisely.
That is incorrect. That's not what I testified.
In
That's not
fact,
what.
Dr. Gilbert, there's another explanation.
You've only
for
got an
how
hour.
Mr. Depp somehow suffered an injury that didn't injure his nail
59
one
minutes.
bit, but injured underneath the nail. And that explanation is that it didn't happen how Mr. Depp says it did, correct?
I cannot make that assumption, nor can you.
No further questions. Thank
All
you.
right, redirect.
Well, I love how Ben was just sitting there thinking to himself, he's
Dr.
wasting
Gilbert,
his
just
last
very
minutes on
briefly.
this?
The absence
Okay.
of other cuts on Mr. Depp's hand, how do you factor that into your analysis?
You certainly can
Type
see an
of glass.
isolated finger injury with any type of injury, and I would say any other host of mechanisms of injuries, you'd more likely see other. So again, if you're, I'm just using this as an example. If you're punching against a wall, you would more likely see multiple injuries to multiple fingers. It really just depends upon how the bottle or how the mechanism of the injury impacted the hand at that point in time.
Uh-huh.
Ms. Hurd's counsel made a point of emphasizing that there were no bruises or other injuries on the hand, right?
Correct.
And how does that fact affect your analysis, if at all?
Well, It doesn't discount anything, but it certainly makes other potential causes of injury more unlikely, meaning
That's actually a
punching
good point,
against the
yeah.
wall or getting the hand slammed in a door or something like that.
And your discussion of Ms. Heard's explanation of the alternative cause of the injury, was that
Alternative
based on
cause.
anything other than Ms. Heard's statements?
Alternative
No.
facts.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Doctor, you can have a seat in the courtroom or you're free to go. Thank you.
It's like the truth is that like
Oh,
both
you can
of
just leave it there. That's fine. Thank you, sir.
both of the stories should have some degree of collateral
Your
damage.
next witness.
Like you would expect to see it from both stories. You see what I'm
Plaintiff
saying?
rests, Your Honor.
But you
All right,
don't.
Plaintiff rests their rebuttal case. All right. Defendant counter plaintiff rebuttal case. Sure.
Okay, all right. So I've got some stuff I want to say, right? So number one, based off of the way that glass breaks. So you have two different types of glass. You have like just basic, blown normal glass, and then you have the kind of glass that's on a car window. Right? And so a car window has tempered glass that the way it works is basically whenever you hit it, it is designed to shatter so that it doesn't turn into large shards and injure the people in a tremendous way. So there was one time that there was it was a baby puppy. It was actually 5 baby puppies that were inside of a car in the middle of at a certain point in time in the day. And I needed to get these puppies out of the car, and so I had to break a window on the side of a car in order to get these horribly mistreated puppies out of the car. And so what I did is I put my hoodie around my hand and I smashed the window. And whenever I did that, in order to get the puppies out, I got a bunch of cuts all over my hand. Like, I'm talking about, like, shards fucking everywhere, man. Yeah, and Albert Einstein was there, and as soon as I got them out, he clapped. And basically, there were shards everywhere. But there were other times whenever I've broken normal glass that's not designed to shatter. So there is glass that is designed, I want to go back and say again, there's glass that is designed to just shatter. So the moment you ever see like a windshield, like you never really see windshields with like one hole in them, right? You'll see like a windshield, as soon as it receives enough structural damage, the entire windshield just kind of explodes. That's what tempered glass does. And it makes it less dangerous overall, although it can create more damage, on like a smaller scale. Basically a lot of little cuts versus like 1 or 2 very large cuts. Yes, large. So that's basically how it works. Now, whenever you look at an actual glass bottle or something like that, the glass on that, the way that works is that the glass bottle is just, it's not made to shatter. So whenever it breaks, it's not going to break into 1,000 little pieces. It's going to break into maybe like 6. Like that's generally what happens, right? So it's much more likely that you would not get cut. You wouldn't have a bunch of other like secondary and tertiary cuts from a glass bottle versus like breaking a tempered glass window. And so that's what I've seen, like 6, yeah, or something like that, right? I'm not sure. It caused big cuts and lacerations. Yes, it will cause probably 1 or 2 big cuts and lacerations, as well as maybe a few other cuts. But the thing is also, is that another big reason why the glass bottles are different is because they break in a way that is unpredictable. For example, whenever a windshield breaks, a windshield is going to break the same way every single time because of the way that it's designed. A glass bottle will not, because a glass bottle is not designed in a way to shatter in an equivalent way to disperse the force of the glass everywhere, right? So it's going to break in a way that's completely fucking different. So whenever he's saying that it cut him in a certain way, I don't think that they can disprove that, because you're dealing with a flying glass bottle that's not it's not tempered glass. Do you see kind of what I'm saying here? Yeah, you guys see what I'm saying? Like, back for everyone speculate. Objection, I'm losing. That's right. Objection, can we approach? I'm telling you guys, it makes perfect fucking sense. Yeah, that's what it is. Let me go back over here. Let's see if I can figure this out here. I'll read a few comments here, but that's what my opinion. A bottle shattering would be unpredictable depending on where it was broken. And also the damage from the bottle is very different because it's like you learn this in physics, right? So if you apply like a certain amount of weight to something and it's this big, the force of that is going to be dispersed a lot more across the surface area. But if the bottle hits them on like the corner or on like the side or the top, that force is going to be much higher.
Evidence.